Okay, we're going live. Notify everybody. Hey, Jake, how you doing? What's happening? Hey, Zach. It's always funny when somebody comes in, I say hi, and they just drop right out. It's always fun when that happens. How's it going? Good afternoon or good evening, wherever you may be. I got invited to somebody's live, I guess a pro-Israeli again, and it turns out it's a girl who I blocked. So I'm like, no, thank you. No thanks. And I rarely block people. They got to be a complete jackass to get blocked. Good. Thanks for not dropping out. Let me invite some other people real quick. I always forget to do this. And by the way, if you're in here, I don't know if you know what's going on. I'm getting absolutely shadow banned, which sucks, but not surprising. So if you could please, if you hold down the screen for like a half a second, all of your mutuals pop up and then you can invite people. I'm going to do that right now with me. So invite. I just don't want to invite any of the Zionists. Invite. If you can do the same, please. Please invite people. There's this guy that keeps coming on who's asking about my childhood. What in my childhood has nothing to do with this. It's all about what I've learned. Anyway, you get a lot of people who hold on one sec, Freedom. I'm still doing the beginning parts of this. As you well know from my format, I usually go kind of cover some basic stuff, the news and that kind of stuff. But I'm happy to have you come up as soon as I can get through some of that. Yeah, it's just there's some things going on with aid packages and some stuff going on in Senegal, and of course Tucker Carlson. All this stuff. I got to kind of get that out on the radar. I'm going to be doing a special live tonight if I can do it. I don't know if the community guidelines allow me to, but I'm going to try to take my phone. I spent like an hour this morning trying to find out how you can actually like broadcast a real live video through TikTok Live, and I couldn't find it. I mean, I looked everywhere. So if anybody knows how to do that, please let me know. So what I'm probably going to do is, I turn my phone around sometime to show maps. So I'm probably going to play it on my PC, try to position my phone so I can just let it sit still and just show it that way. Thanks, Asmi, for asking. How am I feeling today? A little better. Whenever I take a lot of time to stretch for like an hour and a half, I feel way better. I did a little trading this morning, made a little bit, not a whole lot, but enough to, contribute to the cause of paying bills. Oh yeah, you told your class to tune in. That's great, Zach. Thank you for doing that. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I don't know if they'll take it down or not. I'm going to give it the best try that I can. This is really weird. I'm going to talk about this too. I don't want to be a whiner, but TikTok took down a video. It was a pretty benign video, I thought, and I think it got mass reported. I appealed. They put it back up. I was like, okay, cool. Then I get a notice today. They took it back down again, and there's no chance to appeal it. I don't understand what's going on with these people. It wasn't that bad. I didn't say any bad words. I think it went something like this. Time for a new dictionary. And I said, it turns out that if you're against the unaliving of tens of thousands of people and you're against a G-side, that makes you an anti-Semite. That's what I said. That was it. It was a very short video. So what I'm probably going to do is look it up. I keep all my videos in my library on my phone. So I can probably find it in my, what is it called, iTunes or iPhoto or iCloud or whatever the hell it is. Anyway, we'll figure that out. So let's let a few more people get in here. Freedom Philistine, thanks for being patient. Good welcome to everybody. Thank you for sending a finger heart. I don't even know what that is, but thank you. It is. What is a G-side? It's a Genesoda. We're not supposed to say the full word. It's the intention to remove a people in whole or in part through either eliminating their ability to by choking off their supplies or actually unaliving them or both. And the reason why this is considered a legal G-side is because it's definitely in part. Now, granted, it's not like the majority of the population. I think it's 1.5% to 2%, and obviously one person is too much. And obviously, somebody got really angry at me for saying that. They said, "Oh, no. The point is that's a sufficient number in terms of people to be to be at the Geno. That's it. That's it. And if it didn't meet the definition, the South Africans would never have brought the action on the ICJ. So I'm glad they did that. So let's get a few more people in here. We got about 100 people. I know midday it's tough for a lot of people because it's the middle of their workday. Not everybody wants to watch a TikTok live in the middle of the day. But we're going to talk about a few things that are going on. There's a big aid package that's being fought over in the Senate. Obviously, I think it's like $17.8 billion. And I don't know how much of it's going to Israel. I think 10 or 12 or something like that. Anyway, it's too much money. If it's a dollar, it's too much. But it's also for Ukraine. And I think, I heard Chuck Schumer say on the floor today, I just listened to it. And he said, we can't abandon our friends at their time of need. Dude, how much money are we going to pour into this thing? They're actually losing big time. And no amount of money is going to change that. No amount of weapons is going to change that. And, if they do give them some longer range HIMARS, these longer range missile systems, if they start firing into Russia consistently, what do you think is going to happen? I tell you, the cavalier way that our current administration deals with diplomacy and foreign policy, it's reprehensible. How arrogant they are. Yeah, they did vote it down. It's just they're trying to repackage the bill to vote on a new version. So the reason why the bill failed, just to let you know, there's a big expropriation of like $170 billion for the border to try to fix up all the problems with the southwest border. Because let's face it, the Republicans, that's one of their big issues, and they're pissed about that. So they're holding the aid bill for Israel and Ukraine hostage in exchange for the border bill. The Democrats don't want to pass the border bill. So they're at a standstill. So Chuck Schumer is trying to figure out a way to divvy up the legislation to get them to re-vote on it. And we'll see. What will you do? Let Ukraine go to the wall. Well, here's the problem with that. And again, I'm not against Ukraine. I feel horrible that there was even a war. It could have easily been avoided if the United States didn't do what it did. And that's the unfortunate part of all this, which is, same playbook. So, but you have to be honest, most of the Ukrainian fighters that were fighting in the first part of the war in 2022 to 2023, they're dead. They've lost 560,000 soldiers approximately. Russia's lost about, I think, like 70 or 80. These are big numbers of people. And it's like, how cavalier is the U.S.? Like, okay, well, here's some more money. Go fight some more. And they're dragging people out of their homes who are, of, not even of fighting age, older people, women. They're forcing all sorts of people to conscript or beating the crap out of them. And so, bad situation for everybody. It's bad for Ukrainians. It's bad for us, the taxpayers. It's bad for even the Russians. And you might say, well, they took over territory. That has to change. It's not going to change. And the reason why Ukraine had to forfeit that territory isn't because the Russians deserve it. It's because of what the people in the east and the west part of the country did to the people in the east part of the country for 8 years. So if you don't know the story, I've talked about it at length a few times here. I probably should segment those things out and put it on a separate video. Yeah, I got a lot of editing I should do. But anyway, so because of what they did, they sort of deserve to lose it. I mean, they horribly unalived and mistreated and tried to totally subjugate the eastern part of the country to the West's whim once the leadership was changed militarily through a coup. So anyway, I feel badly for everybody because it's just a lose-lose situation for everybody. The taxpayers, you know who it is a win for? The arms industry. There was at about week number 3, there was a chance for a cessation of hostilities, like some sort of a truce. And Boris Johnson from the UK was sent over to basically scuttle the peace deal. I mean, these fucking people, man. Yeah, Imran Khan's another person that's being politically persecuted. If you don't know Imran Khan, he's an extremely popular retired cricket player, very famous man worldwide in that part of the world. And he was prime minister or president. I'm not sure what they call it. I think it's prime minister. And he got taken out of power in a coup. They kind of voted him down as what's called a no confidence vote, but it was engineered by the West. And they put in lackeys like they always do. And now they're trying to imprison the guy for corruption, which is absurd, and his wife. And they charged him with a 14-year sentence. They convicted him, in a kangaroo court. And so now he's facing a 14-year sentence. He's not actually in prison yet, I don't believe, or maybe he's in a jail waiting prison. I don't know exactly. I should look that up. But I think it's going to be overturned. I hope so. The guy doesn't belong in jail. He's a threat to the establishment, but he's not, he's not a bad guy. He didn't do anything wrong. Anyway, let me get some kibble for the dog. One sec. So in more international political news, I don't know if you heard this, but the president of Senegal suspended the elections. And I don't know what it is with these different dictators or whatever. They think they can just stay in power by averting the election process. So, these strong men who just want to hold on to power no matter what, say what you will, but that's going to cause some trouble. So more trouble brewing on the African continent. So yeah, I'm just trying to check the comments. By the way, I had a couple people say they're being muted accidentally or whatever. So if there are moderators in here who I haven't seen, I don't know how to check for that. But if you do, please, like I like to take the. I'd like you to please do this. Like unless somebody's saying something absolutely horrific, I don't mind if they're insulting me or whatever. If they're calling me names or who cares. But if they're, I don't like to mute people unless they're doing something like saying really bad cuss words or really harsh things. So if you could, and I think some of the people that are more supportive have gotten muted. I'm not sure what happened. And one of the persons who contacted me said they'd asked the same question like 5 times in a row. And I don't know if TikTok has a feature that if you keep spamming a certain thing, I don't know how this stuff works, man. I'm just a guy who gets on and talks, and everyone else knows what's going on except for me. Well, thank you, Saloha. I appreciate the compliment. Yeah, the best thing that you all can do in the audience, whether it's for me or guys like Eric Warsaw or Salmonius, whatever his name is, he has a lot of knowledge about religion in the background, or Schmitty, SoCal Schmitty. Just when you go into their lives, just tell people about them. Leave comments on their videos, like their videos, repost their videos. The only way stuff gets out now is if we do those things, and it's a pain in the ass to have to open the. I do it every single time I watch a video that I like now. And I just type in like great video or keep up the good work or just something really benign. In fact, you can even do this on your phone. You can save a comment and you can just copy and paste it into people's comments every time you leave one. That's an easy way not to have to type stuff in. But yeah, by reposting, liking, and making so much more circulation. And so if you like it, and listen, don't do it if you don't like the video, obviously. But if you think it's a message that should get out, the key is, again, awareness is so critical to all of these issues, right? And I was having a back and forth with somebody who I had on the live last night, someone who I was impressed by. And so I said, yeah, it's unfortunate that more Americans aren't aware of all these issues. And so I think our job, especially younger people, right? We get more people here. Probably people in my generation and later, they're going to think what they think. Most people get older, they don't really change their mind. But if we can get younger people, oh yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I record all of them. Just someone says I like your lives, but I can't attend all of them. If you miss one, they're all archived. In fact, I'm a couple days behind right now, but I'll catch up this afternoon. But I try to archive them the same day if I have time. But by this afternoon, including this one, they'll all be up online. We've had some really good ones recently, too. And we've covered a variety of subjects. Sometimes I start going down a different road and we just keep talking about it. It's fun. Last night we talked about homeschooling, which I didn't know much about. And we had a great guest come on who does homeschooling for her daughter. And it was fabulous to hear what she does. I had no clue how they do that stuff. So I don't have kids. So, and then this is another weird thing that happened in my life. And again, I don't want to talk too much because I don't know if this person would want me to share too much. But I got a message last night. One of my friend's daughters called me, and his daughter's sort of this more mature, I think like 11 or 12-year-old young girl, and very smart person. And so something happened in their family. I don't know what. This is the hard part. You hear one side of things, and then you don't know the other side. But so supposedly this person's wife has had different episodes where she goes into these modes where she gets very, out of it to some extent. And while she was in another one of these modes, she called the police. And my friend, who I don't know his wife as well, my friend, I went to he works with Jewish Voices for Peace. And so he and I have gone down to different protests together and with his family. It's been cool. Anyway, and people tell me I hate Jewish people. No, I don't. This is my friend who's Jewish with his 6 children. That's absurd. Anyway, so supposedly he got arrested, like taken by the cops because they accused him of like neglect, or he's a homeschooling dad. So his wife works at some government job. And so he's homeschooling the kids, speaking of homeschooling. And I don't know, maybe it was like they weren't learning the right stuff, or I don't know, whatever it was. She asked for a protective order. And I don't know much about this. It's all family law, but supposedly that means you can't be around the kids. And he was with his kids out somewhere doing something like shopping or something, and the cops came, and like 20 cops came, like it's some ridiculous thing, and arrested him, took him away. Now he has to fight to even be able to see his kids. I don't know what the hell's going on. I don't, you never know when someone tells you one side of a story, but that's all I know. But yeah, it seems horrible for a husband to go through that if it is indeed benign. I don't know exactly. And a lot of other people know more about this than me. I don't know. There's so many things I don't know about. I'm kind of embarrassed that I don't know more about that, but I just don't. I do know somebody who I met once who actually, she's a lawyer and what she said, in criminal law, you get to see the worst people on their best day. And she said, in family court, you get to see the best people at their worst. It's kind of funny. I thought that was a good way to put it. Yeah, I know you can't know everything. That's why I love TikTok and other websites, because you can go online to YouTube and just type in any subject, and if you want to learn about it, someone's probably talking about it, right? And it's always interesting to see which niches people take. My niche is more controversial, so I don't think most advertisers probably wouldn't want to advertise with what I say, because I'm talking about them, right? I'm kind of talking down on corporations and stuff like that. So just to announce this, I want to make sure once people are on here. So tonight at 6 p.m., if you don't know already, Tucker Carlson went over to Moscow and he interviewed the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin. And so that interview is going to be broadcast at 6 p.m. Eastern time, both on Twitter or X and also on at the tuckercarlson.com website. So I went to the website and signed up for whatever you got to do. It didn't cost me anything. So I'll be able to hopefully watch it broadcast there. And what I'm going to try to do, if it's not a copyright issue or a violation of the community guidelines, I'm going to show it here on my live. And I'm going to do a video this afternoon announcing that. But I won't know until it actually happens if they're going to drop the video or not. And I'm going to try to keep the website out of it, just show the actual video so they don't know whether, whatever. I'm just going to try to keep any other banners out of that. But we'll try. We'll see what happens. Yes, Cindy, that should be cool. By the way, thank you for supporting me, Cindy. Appreciate that so much. So anyway, that's what's going on today. And of course, I think we're talking about the money for Israel. I don't know if you heard about that. There's a big fight going on in the Congress, in the Senate, on the aid package that's supposed to go over to Ukraine and Russia. And, the Republicans want a bunch of money for border protection. The Democrats don't want to do that. The Democrats want the Ukraine aid to pass as well as the aid for Israel. And the Republicans are sort of holding that hostage. So that's what's going on in the Congress right now. I'm sure you can watch mainstream TV. I'm sure it's all they're talking about. That plus, I don't know if you've seen any mainstream stuff, the reaction to Tucker Carlson. Did you hear that the European Union, this is crazy. They're thinking of putting sanctions on the guy. This is how angry they are that he went to talk to the leader of a country that's, against Ukraine and against the Western interests. Oh, he didn't talk to the guy. He's just having a conversation and see what the guy has to say. So I think that's good. I'm a free speech advocate. Even somebody, who's a scumbag like Charles Manson, the guy who was involved. I listen to him a lot. He's a fascinating guy, even though he conducted some of the worst atrocities in the United States back in I think it's early mid 70s or whatever it was. So anyway, I can't wait to watch it. I've watched a lot of speeches by Vladimir Putin in the past. I've listened to tons of different, commentary and other things about him, and all non-U.S., non-Western. And I just believe he's a totally different person than how he's described to the public. And it may seem like a shock to some people. It was to me, because I've always been told how bad a guy he was and how he does this and that, and he wants to take over the whole world, like all these things, right? And all of it I found out to be bullshit, basically. Now, granted, he's been in power for a long time. I'm sure like anybody in a country like that, he's had to do some pretty creative things to stay in power. That's politics. That's hardball politics. But as far as him having ambitions I think he's a very conservative, Christian, Russian nationalist who wants to protect Russia, and that's his job. And he wants to have mutually beneficial trade. And he's been sanctioned out the yin-yang by the United States and the European Union to make it difficult for him. And despite that, they're doing really well. One of the things Tucker said when he was there is like, it was so clean. And it was such a nice, kind society, and it was doing just fine. Everyone was, seemed to be very happy, and not like America, where everyone's sort of pissed off and, struggling to get by. It wasn't like that. And if you go into the subways, I've seen pictures of the subway in Moscow. Oh my God, man! It's like a museum with artwork on the. It's beautiful. It's clean. Go to a subway in New York or Washington D.C. or wherever you go. It's not that way. It's kind of a mess. Got a lot of graffiti and just it's not. People don't respect it. I think Russia has a lot more respectful culture towards their norms. Now, of course, not everybody, but I want to visit really badly. I want to go to Moscow before I kick the bucket. Um, who knows if they let me stay there, I might consider staying there. I know somebody who moved there through YouTube. I don't know her personally, but I'm aware of her. She seems very happy. She seems to like it. I don't speak any Russian. I guess I'd have to learn pretty quickly. But I think being somewhere other than the U.S. is probably not a bad idea in the next 10 years, and probably before it gets much more difficult to travel. We may be like what was happening back in the Soviet Union. I know it's crazy to think this, but I don't know how much our freedoms are going to be extended indefinitely. So we'll see. I got to run some water because I have to put some. So give me a second. I hope it's not too much noise. Apologize for that. So yeah, a lot of things going. Okay, now Freedom Philistine has patiently waited about 25 minutes. So I'll just bring up a guest now. We'll see where this takes us. So Philistine, how you doing, my friend?
Good, Chip. Thanks for having me on again, as usual. Um, you know, Anthony Blinken said something that really caught my attention yesterday, and this is, to them, this is all a theater. You know, they're calling the other countries actors in the play and stuff like that. These wars are pretty much scripted out. That's why a war is called a theater of operation now, because what they're doing is they're playing out scenarios on television for the people and stuff like that, but they're not showing them the actual atrocities of the war. I mean, we're seeing it because we're on TikTok, but they're not showing the people the actual atrocities. They put out a few words, but to them, this is all a big play of how they're going to um, fill out their plan for imperialism, or shall I say tyranny, because this is the direction that they're heading in. A lot of people don't know that democracy actually leads to tyranny. A lot of
That's
people don't.
that's a great point. Yeah,
So
it's always been that way.
yes, yes, of course. They try to, people also don't understand that we are a republic. We were established as a republic. They've taken that away from us, and I all I could do is blame the American people because we allowed it to happen.
Well, I think in fairness, most people don't understand the slow but steady progression of what's been happening. I think now they're starting to poke their heads up because of how difficult things are getting. But in fairness, this has been done duplicitously by a group of corporate people, national security people, really, really wealthy people that has been by design, and they've used the institutions, think tanks, the media to their advantage, and it's sort of kept people from really understanding what's going on. That they kind of understand that the economy's been getting worse and worse for workers, but they're not really sure why. And listen, let's face it, if somebody's busy chasing their tail, just trying to survive, and just enjoy their lives for what this country has to offer, they're not going to, most people don't focus on this kind of stuff. They're barely political, and they might go to vote. If they do, half the people usually don't even vote. Americans are conditioned to be less involved. We're not supposed to go out and protest. We're supposed just to go to the polls, watch TV, watch Netflix, do your weekend fun, and then go back to work. So I
Yeah,
don't know
that
if to blame. That
that
may be a
old,
little tough, but
that old Roman tactic of having the gladiators fight in the football games and
yeah,
the soccer games, and of course, that's all entertainment to keep everybody um,
yeah.
enjoying that and not worrying about what's going on in life and the reality of life. That's been going on for ages, all the way back in historic Roman times, where the gladiators would go out and fight the lions. That was just to keep the people amused, so the people wouldn't turn on the government. you know, uh,
You
here
got it.
they've done the same thing. They've conditioned the people to do the same thing. I wanted to ask you if you knew about the Havarada agreement and also the paperclip project.
I'm the name, the paper Operation Paperclip. Just tell. I've heard it a million times. Tell me. Just give me the quick gist of it so I remember what it is.
That's
Please.
when the Sozialiste, which is the German word for the Socialist Party that was in charge in Germany,
Uh-huh.
uh, transferred, they transferred people here to the United States to work for the government and stuff
Okay.
like that. And then of course, there was a letter and the word changed called, they changed one letter in the socialist word or the Sozialiste, which was the German name. So now it's Zionist. So they changed that word. So basically, the Yiddish people, and I say Yiddish people, they were. I don't know if you've followed up on that Khazarian bloodline or the Khazarian tribes or the Khazarian Haganite um, empire that went on in Eastern Europe. But
Can
it
you,
really explains
can you explain that to the audience? Because I'm not as sure as I'd like to be. So please.
the Khazarian Haganite empire existed from the seventh century. They were an empire that converted to Judaism, but they were a warring tribe that was supposedly kicked out of Southeast Asia, and they went into the Caucasus, which is the region of Ukraine, uh, everything above the Caspian Sea, and they were kind of like a Turkic tribe, but they were very brutal, and their king wanted to calm them down, so he asked his wise man which religion he should, start practicing, turning into a national religion. So his wise man told him, well, Islam falls on Judaism and Christianity falls back on Judaism. Why don't we convert them to Judaism? So,
But
um,
hello, everyone. Project Paperclip, because you asked, host. It was a post World War II project where the U.S. imported scientists from Axis states. They gave them immunity from prosecution, but then they worked for the U.S. state in various various functions, such as this. What was his name? This the primary German rocket scientist,
right.
and they also brought scientists over from
Right?
Japan.
Oppenheimer, right? Is that the guy?
No,
Oppenheimer?
not Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer, yeah.
Oppenheimer was later.
Okay.
Oppenheimer was in the Manhattan Project, no, earlier, in fact, developing the nuclear weapon. One second, I'll go check it up. Yeah, Werner von Braun, that's the one. Randelovich said it in the chat. So that's what Project Paperclip was, and it was in part it was so that the Soviets wouldn't get them.
Correct.
So I'm not sure what freedom is talking about here, but Project Paperclip was that. It has nothing to do with Khazaria or ancient kings
Well, no,
or or
it
or,
does
or
have
changing a letter in the Nazi
it does have something to do with the
Nationalistische
Socialist Party, though.
Sozialist Arbeiterspartei.
It does have something to do with the Socialist Party, though.
Well, it ended then,
Hold
but I
up,
mean, basically they
guys. Real quick. So just sorry to interrupt. We have to use words like Yahtzee, unalived, all this other BS because TikTok will take the
right.
live
Yeah,
connotation.
see,
Yeah, please. So let's do this. Let me let Philistine respond real quick about what he thinks it's related, and then Ruska, we can have you reply. Thanks for patience. Yes, Philistine.
Yeah, that's why relating to it as socialist. The Socialist Party, um, because that's what it was. Uh, the
What do you mean by it was Socialist Party? How does that relate to the
Well,
paperclip?
the Mustache Man Party was known as the National Socialist Party.
Yeah, National Social. Okay, got you.
Okay, that's why I say socialist instead of the other terminology for it. So basically, the Socialist Party had an agreement with the Zionists to um, transfer to Palestine. This is all a part of the agreement that they had with the Socialist Party and everything else. So basically, everything was set up to steal Palestine prior to World War One, actually prior to World War Two, but also in the middle of World War One, toward when Germany had already won the war, uh, but told the British, "Hey, let's go back to being cousins." And then the social
When you say Germans won the war, what do you mean by that? I thought that the French and the Brit beat Germany in that war.
in the beginning of World War One, Germany was beating them
I
badly.
thought you said won, meaning past tense. They were winning. You mean?
Yeah, the Germans were winning World War
Okay,
One
gotcha.
and World War Two until uh, every time I talk about the subject, I get an 877 call.
Just I have to say, while we can't take your messages anymore, sir. I don't want to block you, but some information came to our attention, so we can't bring you up as a guest. Sorry about that. But you're welcome to
So
listen if you want to.
if you listen to the Benjamin Friedman speech at the Willard Hotel, 1961,
Right.
Benjamin Friedman lays it out exactly how it happened because he was a part of uh, the
You're back.
Zionist entity, the Zionist Congress. So uh, take an hour, listen to that speech, and you might understand more because history is written by those who want to um, put out their version of the story. It's not necessarily always correct, and we're finding out more and more these days as we have, you know, pretty much information to the entire world on the net. So history is somewhat deceptive because it's once again it's his story. So whoever wrote that narrative, it's his story, right? It's history, but it's his story. It's
Right.
somebody's pretty much somebody's opinion and what their relative thought was. And can that deceive people? Could it be done to deceive people? Yes, indeed.
Sure.
Just like the lies we're watching on the news now. And then they'll say, well, history, this is history, but we know that they're lies and it's projected to us in different ways, but they'll write it the way they want.
Yeah, I need to make an announcement real quick. Thank you, Philistine. So there's a person with the name WAEL, and there's a period and some numbers. It was brought to my attention because I looked the person up, and they said they were from Gaza, and they said they needed help for their family. And it turns out this person's not from Gaza. They're trying to scam people for gifts on TikTok and elsewhere. So if they try to come up on anybody's lives, please make sure the live person knows about this and that they don't bring him up and let him scam people. So sorry, Philistine, let me let Coco jump in for a sec. You can welcome to stay up if you want. I'm happy to have you be here. Coco, welcome. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm feeling good. Um, I wish to talk. I'm wondering why the world is so focused on Israel acts, because there are so many, like, much worse atrocities and wars all over the world. But for example, maybe 10 years ago, I think, there's a Yarmouk refugee camp in Syria. A few people from there go and kill like 25 soldiers of Bashar al-Assad. You know what he did? He just make a siege on all the refugee camp. No food, no water, no medicine, nothing. And just bombed the whole camp. And the UN begged him to bring some humanitarian aids, food, and he refused. And from something like, there were in this camp like 140,000 people. I mean, tens of thousands just starved to death. And in the end, there were only remaining a few hundred people. But no one talk about it. No one knows about it. No one demonstrate about it. And also, for example, in China, they're like keeping millions of Muslims like in a concentration camp, and no one protests about it. Only Israel, like, it's the focus of the world, and everything she did is like huge demonstration, and the media and everyone talk about it. So I think I know the answer why, but I'm interested to know what you think. Why is Israel? They look like in microscope on every act Israel done. You are muted.
First of all, yeah, I got to check that from now on. First of all, I don't disagree with you that there's a lot of focus on Israel, and whether it's unfair or not, that's up for interpretation. I think your interpretation is it's unfairly focused on through a microscope. So I can see that point of view. I think one of the things that affects conflict is awareness. So in terms of media coverage, the history of something, most people don't know much about Syria because it's not been a long-standing situation. It's a more recent conflict. And remember that the U.S. has an involvement in terms of the United States and the Western media, and the U.S. has troops there. Most people don't even know that. So the U.S. media makes a purposeful, it doesn't lie, it lies by omission. It just doesn't talk about it, so most people aren't aware of it. There are plenty of situations around the world that are unfair, oppressive, unalives happening back and forth. I agree with you. And I think the reason why the Israel-Palestine conflict gets a lot of focus is because it's long-standing. It's one of contention. Obviously, people feel quite differently on either side of it. And awareness is what makes that up. Now, I've heard also the argument that the UN is unfair to Israel because of the number of resolutions and/or the way they focus again inordinately on Israel. I've heard that argument made too. Again, I don't know why. I can't speak for other countries and why they do what they do. I don't know what their motivations are, if any. But what I will say is that I think here's the thing that I believe it is. A lot of people who see what's been happening with the occupied territories, whether you want to call it Judea and Samaria as Israeli territory from 1967, or if you want to take the viewpoint as I do, which is it was an illegal aggression, so therefore the territory was taken through aggression, and therefore after 1945, the world sort of agreed that that was not going to be the way of the world. Whether international law gets enforced or not, obviously it usually doesn't. So whether you think that's valid or not, but there are resolutions that point to that and say, hey, we don't believe that's really territory. So that goes for the Golan Heights in the north. Of course, what was the Sinai in the south, that's since been broken in a peace deal. and of course the West Bank, or whatever you want to call it. So, I don't know. The reason why I focus on it so much, just not because I have it out for Israel. I just happen to know more about it, and I joined TikTok about 2 days after the October 7th situation. So, as an American who learned about it in 1989, just totally by chance. I try. Listen, I try not to take sides with the particular actors. Just to let you know, it's not that I have a disdain for Israel. It's that, and I've said this a lot. I think that the aspirations for a homeland, for people to be safe from persecution historically, as well as whatever they may feel is a biblical interpretation, makes a lot of sense to me. And I want everybody to be safe from persecution, including Jewish people who have emigrated to Israel. I think the one thing that's made it hard for me to be fully, celebrating that, and I've heard people say it's a miracle. I understand the relationships and the other point of view. I understand it. The thing I would say with it is a lot of people, unfortunately, were harmed in terms of what led up to it and what happened as it occurred, such that they were displaced. Now, you can say that land displacement has happened in a lot of places, and I agree. It's happened in North America, where I live. 7 generations ago, our forefathers, moved the North American indigenous population off the land, or, unalived them in mass numbers, which is horrific. And so the point I think we're trying to make is that just because things have happened elsewhere, and they're wrongs, right? They're not good things that happen. The one thing that people point to is, history is what it is. So you could argue that 1948 is settled business. And I think most people recognize that Israel isn't going anywhere. What thing people are focused on is there's still this ongoing struggle for how the rest of it's going to work out. And I think for people that are on the winning end of that, I think that would be called Israel, they believe it's their right to do what they want with the territory they've conquered. From those who have been on the other side, including the international community who have looked at it a different way, they see it as an ongoing struggle. And I think a lot of people are sympathetic. And here's where I think Israel has unfortunately done itself a disservice. Whether you are for Israel, against Israel, just looking at it politically. I think that because of the magnitude that they carried out this particular operation, not that they can't justify it because of what happened on the 7th. I understand that it was horrific. And on the Israeli point of view, it's unacceptable to allow that security risk to continue. I understand that too. I think where people don't see it quite the way Israel does is the conversation on the Israeli side is when civilians are unalived, it's because they're being used as human shields by H groups. So therefore, it's H groups' fault for forcing them into this bad situation, which then makes Israel look bad. That's an argument I've heard constantly. I don't believe that's the case. Here's what I really believe, and again, you can disagree. What it appears to many people, including myself, is that the events on 10/7 have been used as a pretext to do things that many or some in the Israeli government or the Zionist movement have wanted to do for a long time. This has given them sort of the way in, or the justification to do this because of the outrage of the public, etc. And I think a lot of people had sympathy for Israel, just like they did for the U.S. after our 9/11 and what happened on 10/7. And the U.S. squandered its goodwill by doing what it did around the world, maybe unnecessarily. And I think a lot of people see that in the same light here. So give you an example. When you have 15, 20, 25,000 people, whether they're militants, civilians, whatever the makeup is, it's way more than what happened on 10/7. Now, people may say, well, that's justified because we have to eliminate this threat, and it's unfortunate, it's the fog of war. Most people look at the bombardments as not being the fog of war, and they look at the intent. And it appears, whether it is or not, the appearance and the perception by the world is it's being done very cavalierly at best, or purposely at worst, to take advantage of the situation, to level stuff, to decimate the infrastructure, to push people south, perhaps wanting them out completely, as Israel moves its forces. I think Benjamin Netanyahu just announced today or yesterday that they intend to move their forces. He announced to his forces, hey, get ready, we're going to go into Rafah, which is way down south and not too far from the actual border. So I think people see this incursion as, first of all, a disproportionate response. That's indisputable because of just the numbers and the attack. I understand the justification, I really do, and I'm sympathetic to it. However, I think the way it's carried out is actually bad for Israel, and here's why. They've made themselves look like monsters. The outside world, and I'm not saying they are monsters, I'm saying that's the perception people have, is that they've carried this out with callous disregard for human life, especially Palestinian life. And you can argue that it's got to be done because of the other mission. But instead of sending special forces into certain parts where the H group is, they've done mass bombardment, not carpet bombing, but they've done mass bombardment in ways that it's destroyed a lot of infrastructure, a lot of residential structures, and so many civilians, including half of them are children, which is obviously horrific. They don't have anything to do with age group. And they're certainly not being forced to stay in a building by the age group when they can stay in tunnels and avoid, a catastrophic structural collapse. So I don't buy the human shields. I'm not saying it never happens. I'm saying that it's most likely in most cases that it doesn't happen. And listen, if you're for Israel and its long-term stability, I want people who are Jewish to be safe. And I think, unfortunately, because of what's happened, there's been a rise in anti-Semitism, as well as the one of the least places that's safe to be for Jewish people is in Israel because of the potential for this thing to explode. So that's my answer to that. I hope it wasn't too lengthy, but I wanted to try to give a balanced perspective on it.
First of all, many talk about the numbers of the casualties. I don't believe the age group numbers, okay? But let's assume that they are correct, okay? Let's assume that 30,000 killed, and from them it's about, let's say, 10,000 H members, okay? So what is the important thing is the ratio between civilians and fighters, okay? So IDF, the ratio is 1 or 1 to 2, which is on every age group member. Unfortunately, 1 or 2 civilians get killed, okay? It seems a lot, but in this type of war, it's very, very, very low. It's that, for example, the U.S. in in Iraq and Afghanistan, the ratio was 10 to 1, and Putin, the ratio, he killed like 50 to 1 on 50 civilians, one army people.
About the Ukraine war?
Yeah.
About the Ukraine war?
Yeah, in the Ukraine war.
Those aren't the numbers as I understand them. Let's continue though.
Okay, so every military expert, when he sees this number, he says, you are doing something really incredible in the type of keeping a civilian alive. Actually, you can also, there's one guy called Joe Spencer. You can search it in Google. He's the he's an expert on urban fighting of the United States. You can read what he said about the IDF fight on urban territories. He said that it's really incredible, and I know that the numbers are much, but the ratio is not. It's good ratio for this type of war, and it's so complex. Unfortunately, they cannot avoid totally from
I got you.
innocent people, but this is war.
Can I respond to that real quickly? I understand that point of view, and so I understand that when the U.S. went into Iraq and Afghanistan, the ratio was absurd. That doesn't mean necessarily that the ratio that's happened in Gaza is minimized. It just means what the Americans did was absolutely absurd in terms of you want to talk about callous disregard for human life. The Americans are the worst of the worst. So let's put that aside for a second. Now it comes down to intent, and it comes down to circumstance. Now the numbers may not be out of sync with typical combat. Understood. But the question is, would they be less if the intent and the operation were different? And that's what the ICJ has to determine. Now, if the step 1 did not determine it was a G-side, because step 2 has to go through a lengthy investigation, that's going to take its course. So they'll compare and contrast the numbers. Maybe this particular person who wrote this assessment, that will be used as a defense of Israel in that process, and maybe others will argue otherwise. I don't know exactly what the intent is because I'm not in the heads of the IDF leaders or the people who run the government. But again, perception being what it is, and my perception is, and maybe I'm wrong, is that the vast majority of the munitions that were dropped mostly with callous disregard for civilian life and weren't directed at militants. That's my take. And again, I could be wrong. I've heard people argue that every single one is done with a particular legal process and it's done by, specificity and intelligence or whatever. And that may be what's happening, but it doesn't look that way. And I don't believe it's that way. And I think that's because of the mindset of those who are in power right now. I don't think most of them who are the senior leaders of the Israeli government, I don't think many of them care about anybody, especially people who aren't Jewish, but especially people who are of Arab descent. That's my guess is what's going on.
So I think you're wrong. I think the IDF is very sensitive to life of the Palestinian, and he try everything in his power to avoid casualties, like civilian casualties. You know that IDF is the only army that has knock on the roof bomb. You know what it is?
Yeah, it's called a soft tap. I would do this. Here's how confident I am in what I'm saying, though. I would stake my life on it that what you're saying is not accurate, and I know that that's what gets spoken of constantly in Israel. So it's a very common tactic to tell their population how they behave in such a moral fashion, and they're, quote, the only army that does this. I have about 120 videos stored on the phone I'm talking to you on that shows it's not happening that way. No leaflets, no soft tap, just out of the blue, boom. Munitions. How do we know that? There's observers who film it, and they know that no leaflets came down because no leaflets came down. They know there wasn't a soft tap because there wasn't a soft tap. There was no warning. Now, they have done it before. They do it sometimes. I'm not saying it's never gets...
Don't do it all the time.
Assassinations, they have to be surprised.
Hold on.
Of course they don't do it. You know, but how many lives of age group saved because of this, how do you call it, tap bomb? It's saved, and it's not good for us, but it saved many civilians. So we did. Of course, we don't do it every time. If the area is already evacuated, so there is no point to do it. But yes,
I think what we'll find out over time, and other people are going to look into it. I know that the IDF does investigations when it seems to be improprieties, and certain people are supposed to be held accountable. So I've heard that before. I think we will find out more as the investigations come through. We may never know some of it, but again, I do not think that what the government and the IDF claims to the public is anywhere near the truth. Unfortunately, I wish they would do the things they say. It would make things a lot better for civilians. But I think that whole line is just rhetoric, just like the United States gives our population a lot of rhetoric.
I don't know. Listen, I have a friend in Gaza. I hear it from the first, how do you call it?
First hand,
yeah. And I think they are correct. They don't. Yeah, most of the things are correct.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay if we agree to disagree on that point. It's just, I've been watching this thing for a long time. It's not just in this conflict I've seen that happen. I see it happen in the West Bank constantly. It happens in Gaza periodically when, I guess because of rocket fire, the Israeli government gets sick and tired and they go in and do what they do. Multiple operations that have gone into Gaza over the years, and just other things historically. I mean, I don't want to single out Israel. It's just that I think some of the most egregious violations of human rights happen with the Israeli-Palestine conflict, whether you want to agree with it or not. That's my assessment. And by the way, it's not just my assessment. There's thousands and thousands of people who look at this, who see it this way, and it's okay if you see it differently. I understand how the Israeli government frames this to their public and to those who support Israel, and it makes sense to do it that way because you want to appear like the good guys to your people. I understand that, and I just happen to disagree with that. I think it's a story they tell their people.
Also,
Anyway, let me do this. Let me do this. Let me let Aman. He's been waiting very, very patiently. So Aman, I know you're probably itching to get in.
I really enjoyed the last time. I want to ask you a frank question. Have you ever lied, to a bunch of people with a straight face in your whole life? I seriously want to ask.
No,
You never lied.
Never knowingly
Never knowingly lie. Yeah, I
In
just
ter-
wanted
no,
to clarify that.
hold on. Let me answer. You can ask a question. In terms of my analysis of politics, I've never knowingly lied about a fact. If I get a fact wrong, by the way, this is the other thing. If
Good.
somebody gives me evidence that contradicts the things that I say in terms of real evidence, I'll let people know. I never like hide stuff because it doesn't serve my narrative.
Yeah. Have you ever been wrong with the analysis? Like you get all the evidence, you get every evidence in the world, and then you analyze the DNA evidence, the forensic evidence, the police evidence. Well, you're a military guy, and then you get the analysis wrong. Has that ever happened? You got
Yeah, I
completely
don't.
the wrong end of the stick.
Yeah, let me give you an example. So there was something that happened in the United States where a guy named by the name of George Floyd was unfortunately
Yes,
died in
yes.
custody of police.
The
So
guy with
the
he had the
yeah,
white guy's hip on his neck for
let me
9
explain.
minutes.
Let me explain to the public what happened. So there was a person that passed a fake $20 bill at a retail store, and they called the police, and the police came, and they had him on the ground. I don't know how or why he got on the ground, but then people started to film it, and supposedly an officer by the name of Derek Chauvin put his knee on the back of this person near their neck. So it made it hard for him to breathe, and he was calling out saying, "I can't breathe, please, give me a break, get off of me." And he did it for 8 or 9 minutes, and it caused the guy passed away. Now I didn't know anything else about the situation other than that at the time, so I was going crazy, like, "Hey, this is completely wrong." Then it was brought to our attention that there were other factors that may have contributed to how he died. I'm not sure if it did or not. That's up to conjecture, but I didn't know that. So then when I did know that, I
I
didn't.
saw the whole trial. I saw the trial live on TV.
Yeah, I didn't see the trial, so.
Yeah, I saw the whole and the police guy he got convicted of murder, and
Yeah,
he will rot. I hope he dies in
I
prison.
didn't know the other part of the
I
story,
hope
so when
the filthy Derek Chauvin and all like him, I hope they die in prison. I hope they get what's coming to them. I'm sure the little brothers in prison will treat them really well. He's going to get an A-class treatment being an ex-police officer, white ex-police officer in American prisons. He's going to get a fantastic treatment. But you kept saying that Israel is the bad guy. They lie. They do hasbara. They do gas. Israel basically. You're accusing the Israeli government of gaslighting for 75 years.
I didn't
Right
say they
from
were
the
the bad
beginning.
guys. You're putting that. I didn't say they're the bad guys. I never said those words.
But my interpretation of what you're saying, I've been listening to you for hours and hours. My interpretation is you say that Israeli government, they lie, they cheat, they gaslight
Yeah.
the whole world, their own public, blah, blah, blah. Why
Definitely.
don't you reserve any criticism for the age group? Their leaders, multiple of them have come. Wait, let me finish. Let me finish. They came live on press and said they will do October 7th 1,000,000 times. 1,000,000 times again. I'm sure you saw that. The whole world saw that.
I heard about it. I didn't see it.
Seriously? You didn't see it? You didn't
I
see
didn't see
the
it
age
live.
group,
No,
Sinwar
you asked
and
me a question. I'm
Hania?
telling you, I didn't see it. I heard that's what they said. Yeah, I heard.
Yeah.
That.
Well, that is what they said. And they will do it 1,000,000, and they would love to do it. These guys are worse than the Shortsies. The Hamas people, they're worse than the Shortsies. The Shortsies were ashamed of, gassing a 6 million Jewish people. They were ashamed of it. They tried to hide it, cover it up. And nobody knew about it till the Second World War. These guys, they love what they're doing. They enjoy it. They enjoy every second, and they love to die. And what he said, they don't care about the Palestinian people. They said the UN's responsibility, and at that time it was 17,000 deaths. And you know what the leader of Hamas said? He said 17,000 martyrs. We have 17,000 crying baby martyrs, and we want more. And now they have 30,000. They got 10,000 of their fighters dead, and 30,000 total. 20,000 civilians are dead, and they're loving it. They are absolutely loving it. 20,000 baby martyrs dead. Let's have more. And it's a small, this is exact word he said, small blood price. This is a small blood price to liberate Jerusalem. This is why they call it the Al-Aqsa flood. They want to gaslight the Muslims, thinking that they're true Muslims. But these guys are atheists. They don't believe in anything other than their own greed. And
I got to get a word in edgewise. I got to get a word in edgewise if you don't mind. I'm giving you
yeah, sure,
time.
sure, no problem.
Okay, real quick. Okay, so a couple things. One is, I can see that point of view. You're welcome to have it. You asked about criticism of the age group. Absolutely, I've been critical of them. Let me explain before this happened. The way that they run the Gaza Strip, I'm critical of. I think that they put their people under tremendous controls that I don't agree with. And by the way, not everybody supports them, by the way. That's the other thing. They weren't elected 100-0. So, and there are people right now inside of the Gaza Strip that are complaining against age group because they feel that the hardship they're under is directly their fault. I can see that point of view. I can also see the point of view of the desire to somehow figure out a way to change the dynamics of the conflict. Now, as far as their proclamations and statements, I disagree. I mean, I hate when people make those kind of statements about wanting to go after a group of people. I think that's disgusting. And as far as their intention to keep resisting, I don't know if they'll be able to or what will happen with the outcome of this, but I can understand their desire to continue to resist. Now, whether it takes the form of what happened on October 7th, which I hope it doesn't, or whatever form it takes, I think to maintain the control system that Israel has had for this many years and expect somebody to sort of just relent and deal in a friendly way is a ridiculous expectation. So you
That's
can
the other,
condemn,
other lie.
hold on.
The story about 17.
You can condemn them for that if you choose. I understand that point of view from the Israeli side. But here's the question. In reality, if you're under occupation and siege and nothing seems like it's going to change and more of the territory you've been trying to hold on to as a people, because you believe it's yours, whether the other people do or not, and you see no light at the end of the tunnel, in fact, it just keeps getting worse and worse. There's been a political divide as to far how to deal with that. Obviously, the people in the West Bank have tried to be more conciliatory as best they can to have a division of power, A, B, and C. And the people in Gaza feel differently as far as their leadership. And I'm against anybody going after people as far as just to kill a group. That's horrible. But as far as defending and try to change your circumstances, what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to just sit there and play nice? And that's all they should do? Stop the rockets, stop everything, and just
Don't grape women. Don't put babies in ovens. Just don't.
Hold on. That's not fair to say those things. Let me tell you why. We don't have any. I've been trying to get evidence of these atrocity propaganda allegations for a long time. Now,
Yeah,
to date, I've gotten none of it. Wait, finish. I tell you what. I'm going to do this. You've been nothing but rude to me and arrogant, and I've treated you with respect and given you plenty of time. Don't come back to my live if you're going to behave that way. You want to talk about stuff without being a jerk? I'm fine to have a conversation with you, but none of that on my lives, okay? You've just been rude and arrogant. I had you here last time. Same thing. Listen, if you think you know everything, come with some receipts. Now, if you have pictures of people actually torching people, and if you have pictures or evidence of people being, SA'd, bring the evidence. I have looked for it very hard. People have told me there's plenty of evidence. They've sent me to different websites, different Telegram pages. I've looked at them at length, and I've seen no direct evidence of how this all happened. So what am I to do? Plus, the Israeli government has a long and sordid history of lying about everything under the sun. Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, this is not me saying this, he was the assistant to Colin Powell, who was the Secretary of Defense in the United States from 2000 to 2006. Colonel Wilkerson said, I don't trust a single word that ever comes out of the mouth of an Israeli official. Not one, not ever. Those are his words. That's pretty strong from a government official. So if one of our government officials who dealt directly with Israel said that, I don't even know all the stuff they say. I just hear what they say publicly. What are we supposed to do with that? I happen to feel the same way with what I've seen over the years. And again, it's hard when you tell lies over and over, and then you say, well, this time it's different. How are we supposed to know? So if there is evidence, I know that some people saw some things that Israel put to a group of journalists. I've heard that. So to that extent, I've listened to journalists. There's one named Owen Jones who recounted what he saw to whatever extent he could without being too gory. And what he said he saw was in one of the kibbutzim, which is terrible, there was a father that was in a shelter, which they used to shelter from the rockets, and that one of the age group members tossed a grenade in while the two kids that were outside watched it happen. He said that was the worst of what he saw. So he didn't say anything about he saw graping. He didn't say he saw anything about the burning. But people make those allegations still. So if those allegations are true, not just hearsay, let's just see some proof. That's all I ask for. And if it's too gory, too horrible to release, what are we to do with that? I don't know what to say to that, except for I have videos on my phone, probably 120 of them, showing munitions coming down unworn into civilian structures where maybe 10, 15, 20 more people die. That's what I call proof. It's video. I'm not saying everything can be caught on video, but to make these claims with no evidence to back them up, other than people saying, it happened, trust me, it happened. How? They said, they reported widespread that one of the journalists who was Israeli, maybe a CNN person, talked to a soldier or some resident who said 40 babies had their you-know-what cut off. And that turned out to be complete junk. Again, it's called atrocity propaganda. And yes, it gets the public enraged. I understand. And listen, if I was an Israeli citizen, I'd be pissed. If I had friends and family that got unalived, I'd be pissed. I'd want to get back at these people. I get it. But these outrageous claims that are used to substantiate the worst of what Israel's doing has no backing. That's the problem. And here's the other thing. I did a video about this. There was some young woman who had her arm hurt in the initial conflict. I don't know if it got shot or whatever happened. So she was taken as a hostage. She was one of the hostages that was released. They repaired her arm as best they could medically, so they didn't just leave her to suffer. Then when she was released and she was no longer in the custody of the H group, she was in a Red Cross vehicle where she's going to be transported back to Israel. And they asked her, somebody on camera said, hey, how were you treated? And she said, very good, very kind, food good, everything was okay, or something to that effect. You can watch the video. So then she leaves. She goes back to Israel. And then 6 weeks later, she does an interview on Israeli TV and says the exact opposite. That kids were making fun of her, not letting her have candy. She was kept in a house with civilians. They treated her, it was a personal H cost. Now, again, what are we supposed to do with that? That's another example of somebody saying one thing publicly, which we've seen other releases where people looked like they were friendly with their captives. They weren't being mean, or they weren't like snarling or running away in fear. And then we saw the woman who was first released, the older woman, said the same thing, that they were treated decently. Now, I can't say that every single hostage has been treated well. Maybe some of the men have been beaten up or whatever happened, and some of them have died, which sucks. But the evidence that I've seen so far, I've heard hearsay of this. I don't have any evidence to back up the other claims, but I've seen video of the things I'm talking about. And that's, listen, I'm more than happy to entertain other ways of it being evidentiary. I know not everything can be caught on video, but because of the pattern of behavior and it's just hard to trust people sometimes. And if you think that's being unreasonable, tell me what I need to do differently. I try to be fair, but for God's sakes, these people lie. I've done many videos about how many times Israel lied. They just lie. And they try to obfuscate their people. Look at the language, how similar it is. They use people as human shields. We're the most moral army in the world. We're the only ones that send down brochures. Then we do a soft tap. We try to protect civilian life at all costs. Give me a break. Give me a break. That really makes me pissed, because that's not what the Israeli forces do. Forget about Gaza for a second. Just focus on the West Bank. If you don't know what happens in the West Bank, which most Israelis don't, inform yourself. Don't put out this bullshit party line that they don't hurt civilians. That is garbage. It's all they do. It's all they do. And so that's why I'm so, and listen, I'm not Palestinian. It doesn't affect me one bit. And it still makes me very angry that this perpetual lie that goes on that says they don't harm civilians. Israel harms civilians as a regular course of their actions on a day in, day out basis. They've unalived, thousands of Palestinians over the years. They don't do it all in one day, but it's a slow but cruel process. And for every one person that is unalived, you got 17 that go to jail that are just snatched up under administrative detention, and you have thousands and thousands that are injured for life. So when I hear all this stuff, I'm like, where are you getting this crap? And if you have stuff to back it up, I have video to back up every single word that I'm saying. Every single word. And I'm happy to display it. You want to go to a Telegram channel, I'll dump it out of my phone. And I'll give you documentaries to watch that have been done by impartial parties. There's a documentary that I talk about all the time. It's called Life in Occupied Palestine by Anna Baltzer. Watch it, for Christ's sakes. Do some work. Think about challenging your beliefs for once. I do it with mine all the time. If you have evidence of the things you're talking about, pass it along. I will come out to my audience and say, you know what? I got this wrong. Here's what actually happened. I've seen it with my own two eyes. Okay? People have told me to go to websites as well as different Telegram channels. I've gone through every page of the website, every part of the Telegram channels. I've not seen any direct evidence of these atrocities. If I did, I would tell the audience. I would admit to it. So these wild claims that are made with I don't know if you made the claim, if you've seen the evidence other than what you've heard. Okay, now as far as the aspirations of the H group to do things again and again, what should they do in terms of resistance, if anything? Should they not resist? Should they try to work out a political solution without violence? Guess what's been happening for the last 30, 40 years? Those efforts have been made. There's a party line in Israel that says the Arabs don't want peace. Every time we've offered them a peace deal, they turn it down. All they want to do is unalive Jewish people and take everything for themselves, right? That's what we hear. Guess what? That's not true. All of the deals that have been offered are crap deals. The Israeli government misrepresents to their public on the regular to make it appear that the Arabs are unreasonable, they're violent, they're dangerous people, they're all T-words. There's no having peace with these people because all they want to do is unalive Jewish people. That's what they're told, and people believe that shit. But if you talk to the average Palestinian, they don't believe that. They don't care who you are, what your religion is, they don't give a shit about that. They want to be out from under somebody else's direct control. They don't want to be living under occupation. They don't want to be living under a siege where they can't control the future of their lives. They don't want to have a neighbor that unalives their people on the regular and then says that the people who they unalived are the bad guys. It's a bunch of bullshit. And I think people are just so sick of it. And after a while, when you can't get a peaceful resolution, you can't get a political resolution. When you protest, they shoot your people. When you do things to try to get a deal done, you get crap deals given and then blamed for not accepting them. Even Israeli officials have said they wouldn't have accepted these deals. So how can you expect the Palestinian people to do wrong by their people, to have to cut a deal that sucks for them? That's such a big compromise to be able to have anything. And the Israelis are so arrogant, like, well, we gave you this. How dare you turn it down? Listen, if you're going to have a dessert and split it with somebody, you want to split it in half and share it, right? You want a compromise that's reasonable. But if somebody gives you a little sliver on the end that's been outside, it's moldy, it's nasty, they bring it back in, they slap it on the edge of cake and say, hey, you want some cake? Here's your cake. Why don't you take this? You want this? You're like, no, I don't want that cake. Oh, you don't want cake. You're evil. Oh, come on. What the fuck? So anyway, I don't mean to get so out of control, but that stuff angers me, that this bullshit keeps getting said. Provide receipts and I'll listen to it. No receipts, please don't bring it on here. And by the way, don't be a jackass when you come on, man. I give you a chance to talk. I'm polite. I don't cut you off. I just ask if I can respond. I'm trying to be a good host. And you're acting arrogant. You're acting rude. You talk over me. I mean, what the hell is wrong with people who believe what they believe? Why do they act this way? Like somehow you have a divine right on truth. I'm open to different things that will change my mind. I just happen to have learned a lot about this over the years, and I've seen the patterns of behavior, and I'm just sharing what I've seen. And this whole talk about protecting civilians, that's a bunch of bullshit. I hate to put it that way, but that's what it is. And that's the nicest way to say it. Come on, dog. Anyway, let me get a guest in here. Steven, I'm sorry to ramble on like that, but that really burns my wick.
Hey, good afternoon.
Hey.
And take a breath over there. Don't and
I'm good.
I'm
good.
sure. I just want to say something, and I'm going to talk around it because certainly there's no reason to move, to go backwards. I just want to move forward. But the reason I did start, engaging with you, a few weeks ago, was the things that I picked up that I agreed with, and that's the way you handle yourself and the way you speak to people. Try to keep your emotions in check. One of the things that I always challenge myself with is, even though as I'm coming through and learning and understanding and constantly, challenging myself and my, lifelong held perspectives that come under challenge, even as I move in a different direction, I'm always open to the other perspective. I believe in effective speaking on these channels and on these lives, that if we have an idea, we have to be effective in how we communicate that. Otherwise, we're just throwing words out there. And, I've seen other live hosts, after being on, 12, 13, who knows, 14, 22 hours, have, not get passionate, but even go to the emotional side. And, when that happens, I just don't believe that we just go ahead and just say, well, now everything is, cancellation culture and things like that. I just can't, I don't take that in. I say, look at the positive, look what's coming out. So I just, only thing I want, and I'm off this subject now. So it's just that that's what, I agree with how you try to handle things in general. And, just wanted to encourage you to keep going. You invited me over to, to come on the panel. So I happen to have the time to do it. And I just wanted to make sure I said that to you. That's all. And just keep plugging away. And, and like I said, I just agree with kind of the way you do things. It's kind of exactly the way I try and do things as well. And I do believe when you say, this is what I believe, this is where it is, but show me reasonable, legitimate reasons why I should change my perspective, and you're going to entertain it. And that's kind of the concept of that I try to also communicate to folks on lives, is understand that there's two sides of the truth always, and both those sides can have shades of gray that exist absolutely at the same time and both be real. And then how do you bring those sides together? Anyway, I do have to run, and but if you have anything to say other than that, I'll see you again.
I appreciate you being open-minded and for saying those nice things. Thank you very much. Have a nice day, Stephen. Yeah, real quick about that. I don't want to see those pieces of evidence for the sake of the gore or the horrific nature of it, but I just want to be able to document things. If those things are true, it's horrible, right? My understanding is that the instructions that were given by the H group to the people doing the operation was to go in, get as many hostages as you can so we can use that as leverage to get our people out of Israeli prisons. That was my understanding of the operation. And maybe just to show the Israelis that there can be something on the resistance side that's not a complete failure. So they shouldn't mistreat people so badly, because there's something going on that will, there's been some pushback, some repercussions for how they treat them. But I'm for less violence. I would love it if there'd be a political solution, right? Because who wants to have this kind of crap happening to both sides? And look at all the damage and destruction and death that's happened. It's horrific and it's unnecessary. And, I think if the Israelis would give people a shot to have their own state, which I don't believe they want to do, but if they give them a shot, it would work. There would be peace, because who would want to mess up their own state once they get it? It's like a huge goal. And I think the more radical members of the H group could be reined in, along with an international peacekeeping force of some type. Now, maybe you think I'm naive for saying that. Maybe you think there's just no way these people can ever calm down. It could be. I don't know for sure. But we'll never know unless it's tried. And I don't believe those in power in Israel, both moderate, left, and right, have ever wanted that. Some may want it in terms of the population and maybe a couple politicians, but the long-range goal and the actions of the Israeli government has been to expand settlements in the West Bank and to go in and, quote, mow the lawn periodically, which is a disgusting term to describe the different incursions they do in Gaza periodically to control things. They go in, and by the way, what we're seeing during this conflict is no different than what they've been doing for a long time. This is just on a bigger scale. It's exactly the same thing. So, listen, like I said, it doesn't affect me directly. It makes me angry to see one person who's more powerful than the other, taking advantage of that and doing what they can to exert their will because they can. I think that's a shitty thing to do. And I feel sorry for people who are on the other side of that. And I'm happy there's a Jewish homeland. I really am. I don't want people who are marginalized to continue to be treated horrifically. And what happened in World War II is beyond imagination. It's unthinkable. So I understand the emotional connection that people have with the state of Israel. Their identity, in many cases, is connected directly to it. Same thing with Zionism, which they believe is solely the establishment of a state that's safe for Jews. So if you challenge Zionism, you're challenging their very identity and existence. I understand that point of view. But I think being able to separate the two is a good intellectual exercise. And it requires some strength of character to do so. You have to admit that your identity isn't the state of Israel. Your identity is state for Jewish people. Fair enough. But what the Zionist movement and the government of Israel has chosen to do over the decades is more harmful than beneficial, especially to Palestinians. But even now with what's going on, it's harmful to Israel. The perception of Israel, in my opinion, is that they're a thug, they're a bully, they're kind of throwing their weight around and indiscriminately unaliving tens of thousands of people in their purported mission to eliminate a group they feel threatened by. That's how I see it. I think a lot of people are seeing that, and they're horrified by this. And I doubt South Africa would be taking a specific case to court and other nations supporting it if that weren't the allegation. So it's not just Chip saying, I see it this way. And, other scholars who have really studied it see it that way. Norman Finkelstein, Ilian Pape, Nico Peled, Gideon Levy, who still writes for Haaretz. Tons of the people that I follow see it that way. You got Abby Martin, Chris Hedges, Max Blumenthal, Aaron Mate, Jimmy Dore, on and on and on. People get it for what it is. And I know the Israelis want to paint it as security, but what they're doing is offensive, yet again. Offensive. It's not like you're just standing at the line making sure people don't come across, and if they do, they then unalive them, which is understandable. Someone trying to invade their territory, but that's not what they're doing. They're dispossessing, unaliving, expanding doing the same old crap they've been doing, making life. Watch Life in Occupied Palestine. Just watch that. Anybody who disagrees with me, just watch that documentary. It's done by a Jewish American woman who happened to visit there because her friends were saying a lot of things that I'm saying, and she didn't believe them. She's like, no way, you're brainwashed. You're listening to Palestinian propaganda. You have no idea what you're. So she went there and she's like, oh my God, I can't believe this stuff is happening. And I think that once people really understand the specifics and they get through all the narrative control, and that's what Stephen was trying to say, there's narrative. There's not truth on both sides. There's what happened, and there's the interpretation of what's happening, the explanation for what's happening. That's different. That's called narrative. And unfortunately for the Israelis, they've been really effective over many decades, including the U.S., who's been complicit in other Western media, in painting this thing in a one-sided version, so people just don't know what they don't know. Lying by omission is a big part of this. But now people are piecing together the rest of the puzzle, and they see it and they're going, wait a second, I've always been told this is this, and now I see this. This is what happened to me in 1989. And I was shocked. I'm like, no, this can't be true. But sure enough, it is. And once you learn what the Israelis say versus what they do, you see it a totally different light. And then all the stuff that people say on the other side of this, you're like, listen, man, you don't know the totality of this. Either you don't know it and you're talking shit because it's what you think you know, or you do know about it and you're talking lies. And I don't know which one is worse, being a fool for not knowing or being a disgusting human for knowing it but not caring. So, all right, Freedom, I got to bring up another guest. I'll let you get back in, I promise. Okay, we have Wagmar and then Danel. Danel, I know, is pro-Israel, but he's a good guy to talk to. Yes, Wagner.
I'm pro Israel.
Oh, Wagmar? Sorry. How you
I'm
doing?
good. Oh, so,
What's on your mind?
so you were talking about the so-called things that happened on October 7th? Yeah, I have
My
evidence
head,
to
I can't hear you.
debunk the rape claims, the beheaded baby claims, the baby in oven
You got to be
claims.
careful about the language. You got to be careful about the language here. They don't want to say the RAPE. They don't want to say the behead.
I'm allowed stuff. Yeah,
Just be careful what you
yeah.
say.
There was a tweet going around. I think it was in December, and Zionists were they uploaded a picture on. They actually help us in a way, because they uploaded a picture and they claimed it was a our woman in the Noah Music Festival on October 7th. But what actually turned out was we found the website, the origins of it, and it was of Kurdish PKK female soldiers who had died in combat in
Somewhere else?
March 2022, and it's from a Japanese P site, pornography site. So I don't have the link with me, but yeah, it was all debunked. So I think that claim alone should debunk it, because Hasbaras were putting that picture up everywhere. That would not be necessary if the
Well, okay, just to be fair, okay? So that's one instance where they claimed it happened. I don't know if the claims are elsewhere as well. So it is possible that even in that one case, they chose to obfuscate it with that false information, that there may be evidence of it happening elsewhere. And I think it's good to keep an open mind just in case that's the case. But it could be indicative that they're lying. I don't know the exact answer. But I'm glad you shared that. Do you have that video or that whole package to share?
I saw a video with a picture of a woman in a military uniform that lying dead on the ground,
Okay.
unalive on the ground, and that's what was shared. But then people did the research and found the origin of that picture.
So do you have any article or something like that that explains this? I'm just trying to get my hands on it in such a way that it
No,
can
it was
be used as a tool.
so it was Dan Cohen on Twitter, a famous guy.
Dan Cohen?
Dan Cohen.
Cohen, okay, gotcha. I follow
Oh
him.
yeah, so he did the. I don't know I don't know if the tweet is still up, because I tried searching it up. I can't find it. Or maybe it's on Twitter. You can't search up like sensitive words.
I'll
Yeah.
look for it. Okay, thanks for sharing that. Was there anything else you wanted to
No.
discuss? Okay, thanks for sharing that. That's a really important point in the evidentiary column. Thank you
One
for
more
doing that. I
thing could
appreciate you.
be the
Yeah.
40 beheaded baby story was obviously like fake. And when you look at who first claimed that, it was a journalist called Nicole Zeder, something like that, who got it from an IDF general. His name is David Ben Zion, who himself in the past said the Nakba must happen again. So that same guy lied about 40 beheaded babies. Exactly 40.
You gotta stop. You gotta stop saying
Alright,
that word.
so
Okay.
it's 40 babies.
Yeah, I got you.
So that's,
Okay. David Ben
yeah.
Zion, you said? Okay, I'll remember that. I'll have to look that up too. Yeah, again, I'm not trying to refute anything because I don't have evidence saying it did not happen. But it does appear there's a pattern of lying about it for the purposes of angering the public. It's called atrocity propaganda. And so the inertia or the avenue that it's been taking for a long time has been to say things that aren't true, but they say trust us on these other things, we have the evidence, but then they show stuff to journalists and it doesn't show the evidence of those things happen, at least according to the ones that I've listened to that have seen it. Who knows? If there is evidence, I'm open to it. I don't want to watch that happening, obviously. But showing somebody with a dirty pair of pants does not mean that happened. There could be other reasons why they had, that on their pants. I don't know for sure what it came from. So it may be indicative of it. And you may say, well, come on, dude, be reasonable. I just don't know. And seeing things after the fact does not show what happened and by whom to whom. It just shows somebody after the fact. So there may not be video evidence of it. I understand that's maybe an unfair standard to hold it to. Thanks for coming by. I really appreciate you doing that. And we're going to let Danelle come in. I know Danelle probably has plenty to say that's maybe trying to contradict some of the things I'm saying. So let's listen.
Yes. I think what you're doing, Chip, is a little bit unfair, and I'll explain why. Imagine that I was to tell you that every time I saw a picture of a Palestinian baby unalived in Gaza, I would ask you to show me, just show me who did it, how it became to happen. I mean, that I would question the way in which it became to be. Okay, which is what you're doing. You're saying, oh, just because there's some kind of a stain on her pants of blood, that doesn't tell me too much. So you know what? I can say the same thing. Just because I see a baby laying in the rubble, it doesn't say too much. Maybe his parents put him there. Maybe his parents took down the place. I mean, come on. This is, let's be reasonable.
What if there's video of the building coming down and the people retrieving the dead baby before they took it to the hospital? Would that suffice for you to have evidence?
No, because who knows who put the boom boom in the building?
Are you serious?
I'm serious, just like you are, Chip. Why is it different from you?
Wait a second. We have video of the things coming down on the buildings
Okay.
before they actually unload the whole thing.
Okay, so that
Are you saying that it's possible that the H group or other people purposely bombed the building to make it appear the Israelis hit it and then use that as reason to lie about babies
no, I
dying?
don't think you understand me, Chip. I don't think you understand me. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if I take your logic, I could say that. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, again, there is video proof of the former. There's
You-
not video proof of the latter. That's the
Okay,
problem.
so let's go to the next issue. Okay, first of all, just so you know, if you go, forget about it. Look in Telegram for the stuff, and you'll find it. It's in Telegram. Okay, the stuff you're looking for.
Well, I went to Hamas atrocities on Telegram. That's where I was told to
No,
go, and I looked through the entire
October
thread.
7th, October 7 atrocities.
Okay, I can look. I'm willing to look. Listen, in fact, if you have specific posts you want to send me links to, please do. I'm not trying to avoid the responsibility of seeing stuff. If I see it, I will tell my audience. I'm not a liar.
No, I didn't say that at all. I think you may be misinformed, which is different. Okay. Okay.
Fair. But show me how I can become informed, because everybody else who's pointing me somewhere, it led to dead ends.
Okay, so I'll DM you whatever I can, okay? But wait, hold on. I wanna run a certain logic exercise, okay? Let's assume that nothing happened. Nothing happened. I'm gonna go with your narrative. Nothing happened, and basically that same day. Hold on.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I said I don't have proof to judge. I can't deny it, and I can't confirm it. Is what
Okay,
I
so
said.
let's say that we can't deny it and we can't confirm it, but you do have you said before, and I heard you say it, that you know that the instructions that they were given is to go into Israel and get as many hostages as possible and bring them back to Gaza. Is this so far true?
That's the operation as I
Okay,
understand it.
good.
If I'm wrong, please tell me what it's different. If you have a different set
No,
of
no, I
ideas
don't
about
have
it.
a different set of ideas. I just have a humanitarian question for you. So you go in, and amongst the chaos, you take a 10-month-old baby, you take several 6-year-old, you take several 10-year-old, 13-year-old, you take several old people like 86 years old, 70 something years old. You take all these people who really should not be part of the hostages, because you have plenty. You have over 100 hostages that are within the reasonable age, and some of them are even taken from a military facility. So you know 100% they're soldiers. So why not keep the soldiers, or keep the people that are, let's say, anything between say 20 and 50, okay, and that are healthy, why not keep those, and for humanitarian reasons, release the babies and all the rest of them?
I don't disagree with as far as that. My guess would be, and again, this is a guess because I don't know for sure. I don't know if any of us know for sure, that as they went in, they encountered certain situations where the choices to do the things that you're talking about were not as simple as you're surmising it may have been. That's my guess. Now, for example, I don't think anybody should have been taken hostage, first and foremost. I think it's horrible to do that. So secondly, yeah, I agree. Older people and younger people like that should be excluded from the process. It should be people of age. I don't know what they encountered, and I don't know what instructions they were given. As far as that was concerned, maybe it wasn't discussed specifically. It was just go get some people. And yeah, as far as older people and younger babies, I agree. They're barely people. They're older or younger. I don't know why or how they
Okay,
did that.
so Chip, so you agree with me that if you were the commander of the operation and you saw some of your soldiers coming back with an 86-year-old, you would probably tell them, hey, let this guy go, we don't need him, right?
I don't know because I don't know what their goals were regarding the prisoner swaps.
To take an 86-year-old person, does that make sense?
Well, I think they're trying to get leverage to get people out of jail that are probably there for dubious reasons at best, maybe administrative detention or maybe even crimes for all I know.
By
So I think that
taking a
was their goal.
10-month-old baby?
Yeah, I don't think it's moral to do that, but I don't know what they were trying to do, and they may have done it because they thought it gave them more leverage. I don't know what they were
Okay.
thinking. I
You
don't
know
know
what?
what the motives
I'll
were.
go with you even further. They took all these people because, again, you don't know why they would do it. Maybe they want more leverage, right? I understand you correctly, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so the next step is, why not let them see the Red Cross?
I don't know the answer logistically to that. So it could be that it's a security risk for them. It could be that they don't need to see the Red Cross because they're healthy and being taken care of, or it could be because they're bad people that don't want them to
Yeah,
do it.
I would go for number 3.
Could be. I just don't have any proof to substantiate one or
I
the
actually
other.
do. I actually do, because they themselves admit that they have unalived or lost due to injury and untreatment about 50 people of the 130 something remaining.
I heard that. And the question is for that, was it purposeful or was it because of lack of supplies or was it intentional? I don't know the
It
answer to
doesn't
that either.
matter.
I don't know
If they
either.
let the Red Cross reach them, at least those people, or release them because they don't want them to be unalived under their responsibility, it could have been avoided. I mean, you can't be
Well, I don't know.
humanitarian just in one direction, Chip. You can't be humanitarian
It's
towards
not that
the Gazan kids and not be humanitarian towards my kids.
the circumstances are different though. In this, and not all together. But let me tell you what I don't know. I don't know what medical supplies were available, and I don't know what the risks were to their operational control and their security based on what you're saying should have been done. I don't know those answers. They could have done it because they're bad people. They could have done it because they don't care about Israeli lives. They could have done it because it was not feasible to get them medical care. It wasn't feasible for them to have the Red Cross come in because of how the Israelis track it from the air, and that would turn up. That would give their
Did
positions
you
away.
hear? Did you
I don't
hear,
know.
Chip? Did you hear about 2 weeks ago there was the medical supply agreement? Did you hear about that? Okay, so Israel and the H group has reached an agreement that was negotiated by Qatar and Egypt, that we will supply medicine specifically for the hostages, and in return, the age group will provide proof that the medicine arrived at the hostages. Well, we're still waiting for that proof. Never released ever.
That's a point of evidence in the column. They don't care. They did it with callous disregard. So I can understand how one would conclude that. Of course.
Anyhow, Chip, that's all I wanted to say tonight. I appreciate you giving me the stage, and I
Yeah, of
hope
course.
I hope for the sake of both of us that the real truth comes out as soon as possible. Even
Yeah,
if my
I'm all for
side
it,
is
man.
everything you say it is, I will be the first in line to apologize and to do everything I can to correct it. But I honestly think that there are some really bad people there in Gaza doing some really bad things. That's my opinion.
I don't disagree with you that there's some bad people in the group. I can't deny that. I wanted to ask you the sincere question, and you may not agree that this is an important thing to do, or you may think it's insignificant. Have you watched any of the things that I talk about as far as the resources that I've learned some things from, like Anna Balzer, the young Jewish woman who traveled to Ramallah to try to debunk her friends who said that bad things like they were describing were not happening in the West Bank? Have you ever watched Life in Occupied Palestine,
No,
which was
no,
done as a recollection
I
of her
didn't see
experience?
that. No. Did you DM'd me?
Would you
You
be
DM'd me that?
if yeah, I'll send it to you. Yeah, I'll send it to you today.
Okay, DM me because I can't, I can't find it on my own. I'm not even aware of it.
I'll send you the actual link with the URL so you can
I
just copy and
appreciate
paste
that
it.
very much.
You got it, my friend. Take care, Daniel. Thanks for being here.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Take care. Now, this is how you have a civil conversation with somebody with whom you disagree. And I give Daniel all the credit in the world for making his point of view clear. And again, it could be that every single thing he says is accurate because I don't know. And as far as motive goes, I can't understand somebody's motives. You may surmise from their previous behavior they're doing it out of ill will, and they could be. I don't know. But I also know that it may be possible if there's aid that's being delivered. Listen, let's face it, the Israelis have capabilities that the H group does not have. They have drones, they have aerial surveillance, and if a Red Cross vehicle goes to meet somebody and vis-a-vis the prisoners, it's possible that that could be used as a way of targeting. We know the Israelis, I hate to say it, seem to have very little regard for the first responders or the journalists inside of Gaza, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that a Hellfire missile from a drone or even an air attack or even artillery could be sent to positions if they were to observe this. I don't know. I just, in terms of thinking it regarding behavior, again, I'm not defending the H group and taking hostages and any of the mistreatment that may have happened underground. If it did, if they had a lack of medical care and they didn't seek it out, that's not great, right? But I don't know what security issues they made those decisions based upon, or their motives if they're being evil. I just don't know. And so I can't make a definitive comment on any of that. And I try to really couch my language when I don't know something. I try to be clear that I can't deny it and I can't confirm it. So that's where it is. And some people may think I'm not being fair, that you should just automatically agree with the evidence they see and they think it's sufficient. I don't know what standard of evidence we have to have. If it's a personal observation and somebody says it is testimony, it does carry weight in terms of a court, but it's not as good as physical evidence or like for example, if somebody does get graped, they have something called a grape kit that takes the DNA and the swabs, and it's a typical thing for women to do if they've been SA'd, and I don't know if that's happened or not, and I don't know what evidence there is around that. So again, just a lot of holes in the armor, and if I can put together the holes, I promise Daniel the same thing he said to me. If what's going on and I'm wrong about it, I'll admit it. I'll give him an apology and say I got it totally wrong. My ego and my identity is not tied to anything as far as right or wrong. I care less. So that's good. Actually, the great thing about being that way is you can get something wrong and then completely shift your mind if you are. So, and it's also about being a listener, right? I listened to every word he said. I didn't have something I wanted to say and talk over him. I simply listened and then responded based on what he shared in hopefully a constructive way and it was fair. I know a lot of people don't like me because of the way I talk about this. They think that I'm being unfair. Somebody earlier today said I'm focusing too much on Israel because there are plenty of other atrocities and situations. Fair enough. There are a lot of things. I would love to discuss all of them. This happens to be in the headlines. Everyone's curious about it. They want to learn. That's why I focus on it, because it's sort of it's the shiny object of the moment, and that's what we do in the news cycle. We focus on the current events that are most well known. Okay, we have Leo George William Smith. That's a lot of names there, and then we have Zachariah Towell. Hello.
Hello.
Hi there. How
I'm
are you
doing
today?
well. Um,
Thanks.
I think we talk about. I'm trying to turn on my camera. I think there's too much focus on looking at either side, but we spend a lot of time talking about symptoms, but we never talk about root cause.
We do, but if you want to focus on that, we can.
Okay, so what do you think is the root cause? What do you think is the biggest problem facing mankind today? Yeah,
Facing mankind, the potential for a nuclear exchange that obliterates life on
right.
Earth.
And if you look back in history, can we agree that a lot of people have been unalived over time for one reason or another? And what is the
Uh,
foundation for that?
well, usually it's conquest.
Okay. The Crusades, as an example, was
Yep.
to control a certain group of people, right? So what I'm
Of
trying to
course.
say is I believe the greatest threat to mankind today is religion.
Okay. You could argue that's a fair argument to make.
Because how in the 21st century people still believe in floating people in the sky is mind-boggling to me.
Well, in fairness, a lot of people are brought up in a household or a community where that is the foundational belief system, and it's not odd to them to have their belief in their faith, and in many cases, it's what keeps them going, especially through a crisis like this. So I try not to put it that way. I try to put it this way. Again, I don't have evidence to confirm or deny the existence of what they believe their faith to be because it seems less likely than more likely based on just scientific observation. But I hate to disparage people because they could be right and I could be wrong, and then that'd be pretty bad, right? So I don't know, but it does seem unlikely. So, but here's if you're getting at there's a religious tension and that's driving this conflict. I wholeheartedly disagree with that because if you look at the conditions, are you saying that or no?
Well, I believe there is a religious tension driving this conflict and every other conflict um, going on around the world. I think it stems from, and I believe that religion was invented to control population. So when you look at it from that perspective, is it possible that a lot of these conflicts, when we have the mindset, an eye for an eye, we're going to end up with a lot of blind people.
Yeah, I think the fighting back and forth, if one justifies it, one responds, it gets into this cycle of back and forth that obviously just leads to violence and unending violence. Yeah, I agree
Right.
with you there.
And because a lot of these, whether it was the Crusades or whatever is taught by our religious leaders, and the problem is we never question anything. We are so politically correct, especially as Canadian. I'm a Canadian. We are known around the world to be very polite, and to me, that's a huge problem because we've got corrupt leaders in our country. And because we were brought up
Yeah.
to be so polite and so respectful, we never question anything, right? And if we don't question everything, we become sheeple, and sheeple can be led astray. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I want to get to that issue. I do want to share one just insight that others have pointed out. I think that while it may play a role in some people's minds, I think the driving force for this particular conflict happens to be land. And the reason I say that is because that was the situation that changed dramatically. It wasn't religion that changed. It wasn't people conquesting. It wasn't a Jewish conquest to convert people to Judaism. It was a delineation of land where people were forcibly dispossessed and moved and became refugees and their lives were disrupted. And I think that's the original sin, quote unquote, of this conflict. And that's what drives it to this day. And that's the context in which the attacks happened, not like they just decided they hated Jewish people or they wanted to convert them to Islam. So, and I'm not alone in embracing that point of view. So you can certainly say it's for religion, but I believe that's an inaccurate a conclusion to draw, but I certainly understand where you're coming from. As far as, conquest and places like that, just refresh for me what you wanted me to comment on as far as what you
Well,
mentioned.
you believe it's not a religious motivation, but look at it in other countries. I mean, Alaska was sold. Lots of Manhattan Island was sold. Lots of land. If it was purely land, why can't we exchange one piece of land for another piece of land, or even a better piece of land? If it's not religious in its foundation, then why can't we exchange one piece of land for another piece of land?
Well, that's a good ideal. I think that a lot of people would like to see that happen. And the challenge to doing that is, I'm sure you're aware of the word settlements. And what the Israelis have done with left, center, and right-oriented administrations is continue to expand the settlements, condemned by every single country worldwide, including the United States, publicly for the entire totality since 1967. So that keeps happening, and it's happened to an extent that now 700,000 plus Israelis live in these settlements, and they're very, very different than the land that gets utilized by Palestinians. They live in relative squalor, some a little better in some of the built areas, but for the most part, they live in squalor, while the Israelis live better than most Americans do in terms of the communities they're in. They're very well maintained, they're very modern, they're very Western. They're nice places to live. The only problem is they're built on land that's disputed by most of the world as being, invalid, that they're not allowed to take it, and they've taken it by force, and therefore they're settling it by force, thereby making it impossible because of the lack of, there's non-contiguous land that makes up the Palestinian territory in the West Bank. So it's very, very difficult to create a contiguous territorial state given that circumstance. If the Israelis were willing to abandon or remove those settlements, then that would make it possible to have a state based on the pre-1967 borders. But the challenge is they're not willing to do that. And I understand it may not even be politically possible, even if they wanted to. That's a lot of people you have to pull out, and they probably resist and maybe have some sort of civil war over it. So I don't think that's going to happen. The problem with the single state solution, which sounds good in theory with a democratic rule over the entire territory, is that the Israelis don't want to have an Arab majority or even an Arab parity. They want to maintain control. Now, the agreements that were put forth earlier when the settlements weren't quite so, so developed and so pervasive, were never free from control. The Palestinians were never given a chance to have any sort of self-defense. All of the territorial boundaries were going to be controlled by Israeli troops, the coming and going of goods inside because of the fear of, terrorism. And I understand that fear for security, but the Israelis have never offered a deal that's free from Israeli control and domination. The whole point of Palestinians wanting self-determination is negated by those particular deals, and the Israelis have criticized them for not accepting them, but even Israeli officials have said, behind the scenes, we wouldn't have taken those deals if we were on their side. So there's been an impediment to peace. And while I do blame Palestinians for some of the more egregious, resistance things like, buses and cafes and other things, or even what happened on the 7th, they are resistance to an ongoing situation that seemingly has no positive political end, and therefore violence is. And they say when you make peaceful resolution impossible, you make violent resistance inevitable.
Totally agree with that. But the point still stands, why that particular piece of land, right? If Russia can give up Alaska, or if we can trade pieces of property or even countries, why can't we trade that piece of land? What's the fundamental reason people want that particular piece of land so much?
Well, it's tied to their very identity. So as people, they've had families there for multiple generations.
So
lived
have
on that
people
land.
in
They got
Alaska
uprooted and put in.
or Manhattan.
Well, no, I'm not saying that uprooting hasn't happened elsewhere. I'm just saying that uprooting isn't right no matter where it happens. Forcible dispossession of somebody's property and land is, in my mind, a crime and an injustice. And that injustice has happened elsewhere, right? But it doesn't make it right in any circumstance. The Palestinians have a very strong tie to what they believe to be their historic territory and their religion. So religion does play a role in further their faith. And they're willing to take any level of punishment to sustain their aspirations for autonomy and to get the land back that they feel they were dispossessed of. They have agreed, in terms of being reasonable, to draw the delineation between the 1967 borders and accept a single Palestinian state based on Gaza and the West Bank. The Israelis have refused for the reasons I mentioned. So that's the stalemate. The United States, unfortunately, has provided political, military, and money and financial cover for the Israelis, making it impossible for others to intervene, which I think there should should be intervention, because especially with what they're doing now, it's completely out of control. I think the Americans are even realizing this is a rogue nation that has to be reined in. They're just running roughshod across the world, seemingly with impunity. They don't give a shit. So I don't think you want to see anybody behaving that way. We certainly didn't want to see Vladimir Putin doing it, and we're using a different standard when it comes to the Israelis. I think that's
Yeah. So
hypocritical.
what do you think is the solution? Because I don't see a solution coming anywhere near the next 20 or 30 years.
Well, I can't speak to that. Obviously, conflict could change everything. And, while I don't want to see anybody embroiled in more violence, other people who have watched this for a long time understand that, the political dynamics is what runs this thing. So the slow and steady dispossession of territory from Palestinians is probably going to continue. Now, we've seen an accelerated version of it both in the West Bank, and they've made statements publicly that they now want to control and take all the land, what they call Judea and Samaria up to the Jordan River. They want to take Gaza. They want to control all the territory, and they want to put Palestinians elsewhere as refugees, whether it be in Egypt, in Jordan, with Syria, Lebanon, wherever. I don't think they really care where people go as long as it's not there or they want the territory. So their impetus is going to be more of that, I believe, until somebody intervenes or the U.S. decides to say no mas, no money if you continue doing what you're doing, no more military cover. And that's not going to happen right now based on how AIPAC and other groups affect the legislative process in the United States. So it seems to be a quagmire, a predicament that doesn't have a simple solution. I think the fairest answer is to force the Israelis to go back to the 1967 borders, which is based on international law. That's getting back to what should have happened in the beginning of all this, and then have a contiguous Palestinian state in Gaza and the West Bank. That's what should happen. But it's not practical given the logistical situation. So the Palestinians just get further squeezed. And I do believe that if they do try to squeeze them out into the Negev through the south, which it seems like that's what they're going to do, that may lead to conflict. Additional people getting into the conflict, which I don't want to happen. But you got to remember, the Israelis are taking this into their own hands and doing whatever the hell they want because they can. And they can't extinguish the H group inside the Gaza Strip. They're not going to. They're not going to get them. They're too hard to fight in these urban areas. They got the tunnel system. They'd have to put 2 million troops in there to try to get this done, and they'd probably lose 300,000-400,000 people. And they're not willing to do that. And they don't even have the fighting force to do that with reserve people that are basically young TikTokers who have no clue how to run a real military. The U.S. has people that have been in the military for 18, 20, 22 years as non-commissioned officers, and senior officers that have been for 15 to 20, and they run the command and control, and they're very well trained. I was in the Army. I was part of one of these units, and they operate very effectively. That's not the case with these reserves. It's a joke. So they're not going to be able to win the battle against the H group, who are much better trained. They're less well equipped, but they can do far more damage and then duck and cover, and it's an impossible group to get. They're not going to get them all. So it's an idea as well. So if you get the people that are armed up, you're not going to extinguish the resistance mindset, because as long as there's injustice, there's going to be resistance. I mean, the U.S. did it. We were under occupation by the British. We resisted, and we eventually got the British to leave. I think something like that's going to happen, or there's going to be a lot more violence and unaliveness as this thing plays out. Maybe it has the same inertia as it has. But I think the more Israel does, the international condemnation has become out. It's coming overboard. And I think Israel is going to have to reconcile that it's a rogue state, and it's going to become worse than South Africa. And I think everybody's looking at Israel as a pariah now, other than the United States and some of the European
I'm not sure
allies.
that's happening fast enough. When they get support from the U.S., and when we can't even state that the underlying reason for this conflict is religious based, if we can't even look at the foundation, talk about the foundation, this is not going to be resolved for another 20 or 30 years, if that.
I disagree with your premise, but I think it's based on land. There may be some in the mix that have a religious fervor, but I don't think the reason why the Palestinians want to get the Israelis out is because they don't like Judaism. It's because they've been dispossessed of their land through subsequent generations. They've been unalived. They've been mistreated horribly, and they fought back in certain cases, but nowhere near to the extent of the disproportionate responses by Israel. And they're angry and they're upset, and they have a political division on how to deal with it. Abbas is more conciliatory and sharing power in the different regions. And the H group wants to fight. And I understand both points of view. Obviously, there's not been great accomplishments for the Palestinians, except for the awareness. I've been watching this thing for 34 years, and this is the first time that the most number of eyes have been opened up mostly because of social media and the fact that they can't control the news cycle as well. And so that people are learning, especially young people. And just like I learned in 1989 that this is not a reasonable situation. I thought it was an ally of ours who was a safe place for Jewish people, and all these people around there were just these rabid terrorists. And that's not the case. That's not an accurate portrayal of this. There's great books like The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. The publisher of that book just stopped publishing it at the request of the American Israeli government. That goes to tell you what's really in play there. If they don't want that book to reach people, what's in that book is what happened.
It's scary. It's a scary situation. Any thoughts on Tucker Carlson going to Russia? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I'm a free speech advocate. So, and by the way, I've studied the Ukraine war ad nauseum. So I'm very, I wouldn't say sympathetic to, but I understand the context in which the invasion occurred. And it was almost like someone was forced into a corner. And if you don't understand the context of it, you can look at some of my videos, some of my lives. I've talked about it at length. And, this whole situation was one that the U.S. stirred up as a proxy war to try to destabilize Russia, to try to get rid of Vladimir Putin. That's the ultimate goal, is to get back into Russia with the business community, remilitarize that sector, and control more of the Eurasian continent. That's what the U.S. wants to do. It's all laid out in the Project for a New American Century, as well as Zbigniew Brzezinski's book, The Grand Chessboard. So if you read that, you'll see the overall goals. And this is what the U.S. does worldwide. It tries to somehow destabilize, get in, get a lackey, and then let our business community and our military presence expand. That's how the whole system works.
Nice chatting with you. We'll talk again soon. Take care.
Okay, thanks for being here. Yeah, I can see how someone would look at it from the religious standpoint, but I think if you were to talk to 1,000 Palestinians and say, "Is this religious? Do you hate Jewish people or do you?" They'd say, "No, no, no. I don't care if my cousin, who happens to be of Arab descent, stole my house," which I heard somebody actually say. I'd be mad at my cousin, even though he shares the same religion and ethnicity as me. It's all about people. People normally don't hate each other for no reason. There are some people that do it because they're, prejudiced and they literally hate people. I think a lot of that happens in Ukraine. There's a huge hatred of people who live in the West against the Russian speakers who happen to be Ukrainian who live in the East. And that's why they sent artillery into their residential areas when they wouldn't assimilate with the leader who had been forcibly imposed when Viktor Yanukovych was forced out by a violent coup and blamed for the gunshots at the Maidan protest. So that's listen, it's all about Americans getting in there and stirring stuff up. I wish I could say different. I want to make nice statements about my country, but the more you learn, you start to shake your head like, what? Really? This is all the shit we do? Like, you got to be kidding me. We're supposed to be the beacon of freedom and democracy, and we're out there destabilizing, unaliving people, trying to get rid of leaders and try to get our people in and try to subject them to economic harm and extract their stuff. It's economic and military bullying extraordinaire. And it's just this new version of empire where you don't go out necessarily, we don't do the Iraq thing everywhere. We do a more nuanced version of it that doesn't seem quite as harsh, but the same results are subjugation and exploitation, unfortunately. And I think the Russians, speaking of that interview, aren't like that. They want to have mutual trade, peace, and mutual benefit, and treat each other with respect and dignity, not try to exploit the other and have conquest. That's my opinion about Putin. You could say that I'm crazy for saying that, but listen to the interview tonight. I'm going to try to broadcast it here live at 6 p.m. If you want to come back, that's 6 p.m. Eastern time. I'm going to the Tucker Carlson website and trying to have it. It's going to stream there. It's also going to stream on X, Elon Musk's platform. So I don't know if that's going to be allowed to the community guidelines. I can't contact TikTok. They don't answer messages ever. So I'm going to try to do it. And if it's problematic, they'll take down the live, and then we'll just have to watch it ourselves on whichever one you want to watch it on. But that's going to be cool. I'm going to have people here tonight at 6 p.m. If you want to come. I'll be going live about 5 minutes early, and we'll see what happens. So, all right, we have one last guest, Zachariah, and then we're going to be closing up shop. Hello? Zachariah, you there? I think I unmuted you, didn't I? I hope. It's saying 45 more seconds. I don't know if you can come in. If you do come in, just start talking. Won't talk you over. Sometimes TikTok does that when you first try to open someone's mic, and then if you have to do it again, it says they have to wait like 50 seconds or something. It's really weird. Anyway, so I'm interested to hear what he has to say. I'm actually someone who's done deep dives into this guy because I want to understand what he's really all about. And what I came to find out was, and this is disappointing again, what the West says about this guy is not grounded in reality. It's not surprising, but I'm not saying he's some cupcake. But I'm saying that 90% of what's said about him is complete malarkey. You know, he's a conservative Christian. He used to drive a taxi after he got out of the KGB. He was a taxi driver in Moscow. I mean, what kind of guy goes from driving a taxi to becoming the president of a superpower, right? Interesting. He dropped off, so do that. I do want to let you know my normal schedule, just for those of you who don't know. I'm an Army vet. If you're watching for the first time, do me a favor. If you're someone who's new here, can you please type the number 1 in the chat? Because I just want to know if there's nobody new, I don't want to go through my little spiel of who I am. But yeah, if you want to do a Ukraine live or whatever, I've talked tons of times about how that came to be. Hi, Veritate. How you doing? Hey, Martin. Hey, Juju. Trey, how you doing? Good to see you. Emo Chihuahua, good to see you. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Gargzakshi Kibra, I probably said that wrong. Samina Sadiq, how you doing? Six Pack, oh boy. You are liberal. I'm not a liberal. I don't have a category. I'm probably somewhere so far left that I just share a variety of views. I don't know. I'm a non-categorical thinker, but try to evaluate stuff. You're welcome. Okay, so real quickly, for those of you who probably don't know who the hell I am, my name is Chip Barnes. I've been on TikTok about 3.5 months, first time on social media. I talk about geopolitics, a lot of things about conflicts or just world events or how political structures work, power, all the stuff, both globally and domestically. I talk sometimes about domestic politics because it's kind of, it's like a pageantry. But I also talk about the fact that I don't think it's really a path to changing the country because of how it's controlled by, unfortunately, a lot of stronger forces. It no longer serves the constituency. I learned about the Israel-Palestine conflict when I was 21 years old, which completely changed my thinking about it. And ever since, I've kept sort of an eye on it. I'm not an expert. I don't have a PhD or anything like that. I'm just a guy, but I enjoy studying things like geopolitics and history and trying to get to the bottom of stuff as best I can. I don't always get it right. And when I'm wrong, I admit it. Someone we had on earlier, Dan L., said he's going to send me evidence of some of the atrocities that have happened on 10/7. I'm totally open to trying to review whatever I can to tell you the truth. I've never knowingly said something here on TikTok that I know is false to kind of make my point. I don't believe in doing that. My way of running my show, just is I let people come up, even if they completely disagree with me. I let them say what they want to say, and then we take turns going back and forth, hopefully in a civil manner like we did today. And I think people enjoy that. I try to be objective. I have my biases. I'm a white dude from America. I'm probably privileged to some extent, so whatever drives behind that is what it is. But even with that, I try to ask questions and be fair. And like I said, I've done videos about this. If the script was flipped in this conflict and it was an Arab nation that had been carved out by the British and other people who set this up, and it were Jewish people that got dispossessed of their land and they got scattered to different places, and what's happened subsequent, I would be highly critical of the Arab nation, whatever it would be called, because it's about the power dynamics, not particularly who is doing it to whom. It's just what's being done. And I think that's a fair way to look at it. That's intellectually consistent. However, because I'm critical of Israel and Zionism, I'm called out as being anti-Semitic, or that I love the H group. I'm all for T-words. I'm for graping. I'm for burnt, all that BS. No, I'm happy there's a safe place for Jewish people to be. I just don't, I have issues, as many do, with how it came into existence as far as who got harmed. And so one team won and the other one lost badly. I think that's not fair. It's happened a lot before, but it was unfair in this case as well. And what's happened subsequent has been horrific from the Palestinian side. Once in a while, there's horrific responses. I understand the anger around that too. I just don't know how you're going to get around it if you keep subjecting somebody to control, brutalization, occupation, and blockade. How can you expect them to play nice? I think that's an absurd, way to look at it, that they're the violent ones. Well, you're imposing violence on them 24/7, 365. The population just doesn't see it. It's out of sight, out of mind. But the Palestinians are living it very well. 10/6 was not peaceful. 10/6 was agony for people that live in Gaza and those who live in the West Bank. It's a tough life. If you're not familiar with this documentary, if you're new and you haven't heard me say it, it's called Life in Occupied Palestine. I'm going to send the link to Dan L. to watch. Hopefully he watches it. And I think it's a head scratcher. Once you see what actually happens in the West Bank, you're like, damn, I didn't know this. This is messed up. And there's even more that's not even in the documentary that's happening now vis-a-vis the conflict. So I hope you'll watch things like that. There's also another one called Gaza Fights for Freedom. And all these are free to watch on YouTube, by the way. You may have to do a little searching because they're trying to suppress this stuff. You'll find it eventually if you do enough searching. But these are things that I think this should be required watching for everybody, because then it gives you the context. You're like, damn. And if you want to go back to the very beginning, there's two resources I recommend. If you're a reader, I recommend you read Ilyan Pape's The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. Now, it may be hard to find a copy because the publisher has just stopped publishing it at the request of the Israeli and American governments. So that should tell you there's something in the book that they don't want people to know if they're stopping the publishing of it, right? And by the way, the orders have been through the roof for this book because everyone wants to learn more. That covers the conflict from the beginning, what led up to the state of Israel, how did people treat each other, who got unalived in what manner, what happened with the land, what happened with the collusion of the Balfour Declaration and the British and the Rothschild family and all that stuff, and then on forward and what's happened. That's a great resource to understand the full context. I've read it, and it's a great resource. You can read books by Norman Finkelstein. Norman Finkelstein. He's written books about Gaza, about the West Bank, about his family. His grandparents were unalived by the Germans in those horrible situations. And he says it's precisely because of what happened to his family that he doesn't want another group doing it to someone else's family. I think that's fair. That's how I look at it. So it's kind of hard to think that you have the grandsons or grandchildren of people who suffered horribly in these situations that are unthinkable, and now they're doing some of what happened to their people back then to another group. I find that to be terribly sad and ironic. So my normal schedule, for those of you who don't know, I come on every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here on TikTok, Eastern Time, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. And then every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, like today, I go live from 12 noon until about 2 p.m. On the weekends, if you come on a Saturday, I usually go a little longer because I have more time to do that. I take all guests. I treat everybody equally. I don't try to have a pro-Palestinian thing, although a lot of times people come here because, that's the perspective from which I talk about this. But it doesn't mean if you feel differently, you can't come up. And I don't mistreat you. I give you respect. And I wish I had that returned to me in all situations, but it doesn't always. That's okay. It doesn't always happen. If you want to follow my work, this is being recorded, and it's going to be uploaded to my YouTube channel and my Rumble channel within an hour or two. If you want to find those, it's very easy. There's a link in my bio. It says Linktree Chip Barnes. So if you're in the United States, there's actually a little chain and a link. You'll see it. Just click on that. It'll take you to my Linktree. It has my social media, including the two I mentioned. And then it has some links to some groups on an app called Telegram, which is just a messaging app / communications app. It's almost like Facebook / a messenger put together. So, and then you can talk to other people. There's a few different groups that I've created one for Palestine, one for these bigger political issues. You'll see it. And then towards the bottom, if you want to support my work, I'm not a rich person. I advocate for working class people and changing the power structure. You don't get a whole lot of help from the outside when you do that, right? No one wants to touch me with a 10-foot pole, which is okay. But I still have to survive like you do. So you all go to a job or you have other ways of making an income. I'm trying to make this work for that purpose, but no more. So I do have a little place where you can do $5 a month. I go live about 90 hours a month. So $5 for 90 hours of someone's time you can plug in during all the ones I mentioned. And by the way, there's a banner on my homepage that lists the same schedule. So if you forget what I said today, just go to my videos. You'll see it's on the upper left. I try to make at least 3, 4, 5 videos a week. So check out my page. Right now I'm sort of in a holding pattern because I've gotten a video taken down. I'm trying to, give a little time because they tend to punish you if you get multiple videos taken down, and I tend to cover stuff that people don't like, so I get mass reported. And then finally, if there are moderators in here, thank you for helping out. I never know who's moderating, but I know that takes work. If I didn't get to you in your questions, it wasn't because I was ignoring you. It was because I just don't see them all the time when I'm engaged in conversation. So please come on back. Tomorrow I'll be live at 8 p.m. And sometimes I go live. I'm going to be live tonight at 6 p.m., by the way, if you didn't hear me mention that. Tucker Carlson is doing an interview with Russian Federation President Vladimir Putin. It's being broadcast live or at 6 p.m. It was recorded a couple days ago. But it's being broadcast at 6 p.m. Eastern on tuckercarlson.com, or it's also going to be on Twitter under his account. Or you can come watch it with me. I don't know if they're going to let me do it, but I'm going to try. And we'll talk about it. And then we'll talk about it afterwards. And we can have comments coming up too, which will be kind of cool. There's one more documentary you can watch as far as it's one of the villages that was horribly, I don't even want to say what happened. It's called Tantura, Tantura. So if you want to see how cavalierly the people who perpetrated it's an atrocity, basically. It was how one of the villages among many were treated during that transition in 1948 and how they were unalived. And when you hear what the Israelis did, you're going to be sickened. So if you want to see what they actually did and how callous they are about it, they laugh about what they did to people. It's disgusting. It'll make you sad, and it'll give you a good idea how Zionism takes its course in real action, because that's indicative of what it is, in my opinion. Those who push hard for Zionism, that's how they think. They're supremacists, they're haters, they don't care. If you're not someone of their group, you're a piece of trash. And I think that's really sad. Again, I'm going to try to push hard to get some of this evidence that we're talking about here, because I don't want to be unfair in terms of the way I see this, because if there is evidence for some of these atrocities on 10/7, I want to report them to you, that I've seen them. But to date, people who say they have the evidence don't bring it, which is frustrating, because they claim with such certainty that these things happened, and yet when you ask them for any indication, they go, well, she had something on her pants or whatever. You're like, dude, that doesn't prove anything. Okay, that's what I got for today. I will see you all again at 6 p.m. if you want to be here. I appreciate you being here, and